Geetanjali, I've known you a long time, and you've had a very varied background. You were with Lintas, you were in advertising. The last thing I thought I would see you as is this big business tycoon. So tell us a bit about how difficult the journey was.
Yes, first of all, thank you very much to the ABP Summit and to the leadership of the ABP Group for inviting me here today and to attempt to share my transformative journey, both before the crisis that struck me rather suddenly from the cold and after this crisis in the last 2 years. It's also a great delight to be in dialogue with none other than Vir Sanghvi, not only because in the media and in the journalistic field, he is an icon, with enormous expertise and experience, but also because I've known him. And that makes a huge difference.
For a long time.
For a very long time. I knew his family, I knew his son very well. So that puts me greatly at ease. And that's one thing about leadership. You can succeed if you have an enabling environment. So hopefully I'll do okay today. And thank you very much to the audience for being here. Now quickly, my journey was not just advertising and communication. In fact, I left advertising and communication in the year 2010 almost. After that, I joined my late husband, Mr. Vikram Kirloskar, in the family company, Kirloskar Systems Pvt Ltd. Now, many of you would know that Vikram was credited with bringing Toyota into India. What you might not know is it is not just cars, but we set up more than 6 joint ventures with this group from almost 30 years ago. And the first company we set up was Toyota Textile Machinery, Kirloskar Toyota Textile Machinery, and Toyota Worldwide also started with textile machinery. That was the journey for Vikram in the last 30 years. I joined him in that journey approximately in the year 2010 when I left advertising. I thought, because we underwent a family split in the Kirloskar family, and it was a good time for me to step in and support my late husband in his business, and it was important for me to do it. So that was the first step out. Since then, I independently worked not only supporting him from the back where required, but also on 2 Japanese joint ventures myself. One was a 300-bed tertiary care hospital in Bangalore called Sakra World Hospital, India's very first India-Japan partnership joint venture between my Kirloskar Systems and Secom and Toyota Susho, Japan. Second, I set up Toyota Susho Insurance Brokerage, again a joint venture with Kirloskar Systems. And then I worked with Vikram on many platforms in his joint ventures with Japan. So that was really, now you want me to speak again after?
I wanted to ask you a bit about, you've done many things, but one of them is you've been a great ambassador for India-Japan friendship as well. So I wanted to ask you a bit about that, because for many of us, Japan is a country we admire, but it's somewhat impenetrable. We can't get through because of language, etc. But you've done so much to bridge that gap, right?
I think and that's why it was important for me to explain a little bit of the journey prior to getting on to this. But yes, one of the reasons why both Vikram and I understood Japan well is because we had 30 years of successful partnership experience, and there was a lot of learning. And that social and professional equity, I thought now it's time, over the last few years, intensified in fact after Vikram, to be able to contribute to the India-Japan platform by providing Indian businesses with a deeper understanding of the Japanese way and work culture. Because as Veer, as you rightly said, it is very difficult to penetrate. Yeah. Because, you know, whilst there are synergies between the two, there are also very severe contradictions. And one of them is, they wouldn't understand if something isn't absolutely on time. You know, the interesting thing about Japan, and I learned that very recently, surprisingly, all the clocks across the country are exactly the same at the same time. Yeah. And Shinkansen, in the train railway stations, in the boardroom, in one of the political offices, at an art gallery, it's not at the same time. So when they first came here, they were a little puzzled, because when they said 10 past 3, we have a meeting in the government or with a trade forum, 10 past 3, my watch would show about 8 past 3. When we reached there, it was 3:12. Their driver was 3:15. Somebody else was 2 something. So, you know, it's very minor differences which probably can cause some discomfort. Yeah. So
I want to fast forward slightly, though I know this is a difficult thing to talk about. Your husband was in the prime of his life. His business was growing. He'd done so much for Japan-India relations. All of us thought he was going to become an even bigger titan of industry when tragedy struck. So tell us a bit about that.
Yes, it was something that I've learned to speak about, because being in advertising and communication, you obviously do better when you communicate, you feel better. So thank you, I will share this with you. In the year 2022, on 29th November, we got up and I found him heaving, breathless, and finished. He collapsed. And even before I could get ready and put him in the car to take him to the hospital, I realized it's all over, but the human mind doesn't accept it. And then you need to obviously consult medicine and medical care. And they proclaimed him, they said he's passed away, but we'll put him on a ventilator. You can call everyone. And I was absolutely alone. And you know, it's not that you and I are not used to loss. Each one of us will suffer, has suffered loss in some way. The problem with this was the suddenness of it. So when a blow hits you very suddenly, the impact is not only harder, but the unpreparedness sometimes takes away from your emotional and intellectual ability to deal with it, right? So that was really the worst part of it.
Now, you were a very close couple, not just personally, but in business. And suddenly to find yourself all alone, personally alone, bereft of the company you were used to, the companionship all your life, and with this business empire, when did it strike you that suddenly it was just you, and how did that feel?
That's a lovely question, Veer, because it takes me back and it's important. I felt absolutely alone within seconds of it. It didn't take me time for it to dwell, because the void, because of the depth of the relationship, the extent of the relationship, the 40 years of the relationship, business, personal, professional, intellectual, creative, sports, every field, you're right. So it was, the void felt very immediately. You know, it was suddenly out. Everything seemed to have gone out of my life. You know, you feel your life is shattered into a million pieces and you're really left all alone to deal with it, to pick it up. But you know, within 3 days, I told myself, within 5 days, I sent all my relatives and my children and my grandchildren back to where they came from. Because there's one thing that you must realize. Leadership shows there. It's not just in business. You have to lead the situation. You have to lead the people around you. I realized that when you are occupying a position of stature and wealth and you know, a scope of influence, then the responsibility on you to other stakeholders beyond yourself and your immediate family is also very great. And that's where your leadership comes in. It's important. I'm relating it because many of you, or all of you, are in some business or the other. So it's important. I realize that those stakeholders are dependent, Veer, on every decision that I'm going to take. They're dependent on every emotional outburst that I will have. So I could sense a certain sense of anxiety in the multiple stakeholders. I also, don't forget, my daughter was 2.5 months pregnant. And I also had to ensure, though she's a strong professional person in her own right, but I had to ensure that she doesn't feel deprived, that she doesn't feel I have now a huge strength that is gone and I have a weak cover. I had to get her confidence as well. So when that realization came on me, I applied all my leadership skills, my experience of the years, and all the learnings that I had. Remember, I had learned from the best. So all my learnings from Vikram, I could apply at that point. I sent everyone home. And I said, my only anchor will be me and myself. I will now rely on my own experience, my own mental strength, and garner myself and rise to the occasion and take charge. So the first thing I had to do was all the paperwork. You know, this happened end of November, and all the board meetings were scheduled, 7 joint ventures, middle of December. I did not want to lose time. I wanted to ensure that we came onto the boards, that my daughter was nominated on our joint venture partnership boards. I visited each and every factory, 7 in Bangalore, 2 in Delhi, and I met all our Japanese partners right up to Japan, Nagoya, and in Bangalore, though they were very, very kind. They were not expecting it. They wanted to give us time, but I went and met them only to assure them that we are there, Manasi and I are there, and we will carry forward Vikram's legacy on the same ethics, same shared values, and the same unity of purpose. So that leadership you have to demonstrate when you're hit with an overwhelming personal crisis as well.
I mean, the whole world knows what leadership you demonstrated and how you ran the company so successfully. But my question is, were there moments when you were out there projecting this brave face, getting on with the job, assuring, I mean, the thousands of people who depended on you that there was no problem? Were there moments when you came home, when you felt alone, sad, or did you just make your head, put it out of your head and go forward?
Veer, I learned that grief is not linear. It comes in waves and at the most unexpected moments, number one. Second, grief takes you to the depths of sadness like you wouldn't believe it. And the suddenness, as I said, was what impacted. All his medical tests 45 days before were better than you and me right now. So that was very hard, and with all the front that I put up, you know what happened, Veer? I almost developed a split personality.
In what way?
I think I'm two people, because I get huge anxiety sometimes. I read a research which said this anxiety comes between 2:30 and 3:30 a.m. and bang on at 2:45 I get up, even now.
Even now?
Yes, even now I get up. It's the gaps are increasing, but last night I slept very well because I didn't want to come to ABP in a disheveled state, so I made sure, and I didn't want to let Veer down, so I actually slept very well. So when you have a purpose, it helps you override your weakness. You need to. So you have to convert your grief into resolve. But I still go through a lot of self-doubt. You're all by yourself. And people and relatives can help you, but they can't live your life for you. That you have to do yourself. So there is a lot of self-doubt, lot of anxiety, lot of palpitation, lot of fear, all the time. Especially in the middle of the night.
You hide it very well. I wouldn't have thought so. You don't look at all.
I've also done a lot of acting, so I guess.
Okay. What were the learnings? Because God forbid anybody was put in the situation that you are, but you were put in this terrible, sudden situation with huge responsibilities on your head and your shoulders, and you coped so magnificently. So for anybody else who's ever in that kind of adverse situation, what are the learnings? What's your advice?
Interestingly, the learnings in coping with a massive crisis in your personal life are rather similar to the learnings that you would have and the way you have to apply yourself in a work situation. A crisis is a crisis. The suddenness of a crisis is the suddenness of a crisis. So, crisis has a kind of a transformative impact on you. And it also has an impact on the ecosystem around you because you're coping and dealing in place of someone else, right? So the biggest learning is you have to take hold of yourself, you have to step back, you have to structure your mind, because remember, in a crisis, whether at work or home, your mind goes in 100 directions. You need to pull it together, you need to focus, you need to transform your grief into resolve, and very importantly, define your objective and the purpose. You know, your biggest anchor in a crisis is your purpose. The minute you're purposeless, the minute you feel you're floating and you're unable to focus, you will not be able to cope or come with the right solutions. And whatever decisions you take will be overwhelmed by a very high level of emotional instability, which will impact not only you personally, but your business and your ecosystem around you. So that is my purpose was very clear, that I had to carry forward the legacy that Vikram has, and in the later years with me and Mansi, brought it to a certain level. So I wanted to commit myself to not only maintaining it, but I also want to grow it to the next level. And I know that that's what he would have wanted for us.
Many people in Indian business, and this is regrettable but sadly is true, are not equipped or designed or built in a way that they take women as seriously as they take men. Was that a problem for you?
I'll tell you, it was not just the woman. If it were a sister or a daughter, it would have been easily accepted, Veer. When a wife steps in, wife being woman and wife, for some reason, it's not that, you see, in my position, please remember, I'm very fortunate that my husband created a standard of environment wherein he left me not unprotected. You see, the scale of what we control prevents individuals or forums to upfront come and differentiate or discriminate. So overt discrimination I will never face. And I'm lucky, and for that, it's my husband I give credit to. But there are subtle discriminatory expressions, you know, there are certain exclamations, because what you need to do, however, Kaveri knows that I've always been working. She's seen me working for 30 years. So it's not a bedroom to boardroom walk for me. I was already there. And I was also working on the Japanese joint venture, so I was not new to them either. But the problem is, Vikram was leading. And he was brilliant. He was an MIT engineer, absolutely brilliant. So you're coming in from behind. People have seen you, they've complimented you, but you're leading, and I'm not certainly nowhere close to being as competent as he was. Absolutely, and I'm not saying this to appear humble or for the optics. I'm not. Those who worked with me will say it. But what I found, you have to build confidence. I never took anyone's loyalty or support for granted, Veer. I did not say society should be progressive. I said, forget about what it should be. It is what it is. You need to accept in work and in life. So I accepted it, and I put in a huge amount of effort to build credibility and confidence. Before every meeting, I do a lot more homework than most people would do. I study, I read, I memorize. I'm good at memorizing, very good at ratta maruing in school, so I don't know, I can remember numbers. So I memorize, and I work very hard. I was a student who really had to slog to get 90%. Vikram was a student who didn't even do his homework, and he would get 100%. So there is a gap. There is a gap. You know, forget about whether Veer finds me credible or not. Forget about the fact that he can accept or not accept me as a wife or a woman. The fact is, I'm behind. So I need to catch up, right? So I did not take my acceptance for granted. I worked hard. I built up credibility. But Veer, you're absolutely right. In a forum, in a business meeting, very often, I can see in the beginning, first 1 year was very tough. There was like a very indulgent attitude. Sometimes there was a bit of a scoffing attitude. Oh, there she is, you know, trying. It wouldn't have happened if I was a daughter or a mother even. Mothers are beautiful. In India, man's mother is accepted beyond anything else. So that was very hard. But you have to build credibility. In any case, you have to work at it.
You've mentioned this, but you were not exactly a housewife who inherited a business. You were part of the business. You had considerable achievements of your own. Right. And even this whole India-Japan thing was your own initiative. You were the one who set it up. You were the one who spoke to the Japanese. Yes. So did all that help when it happened?
Oh yes, that helped enormously because, in fact, it's a very good point, Veer, because my main business is with the Japanese, right? And there's a lot at stake there. So my having worked on the India-Japan platform to promote cooperation, to promote a better understanding, I managed to have built a certain level of professional and personal equity with the Japanese ecosystem. And that really helped give confidence because they'd heard, they'd seen. So not only in the business with the Japanese, but overall in the influencing ecosystem which my partners might be meeting in other areas of their business, it truly helped to be there already. That really helped in the credit. You know, there's one thing you had asked me, maybe you'll ask now, on whether the Japanese accepted.
I was actually building up to that, but I was going to say that Japan, which is a country of such high achievers, is for some reason kind of short on women achievers in business. So what was it like for them dealing with a woman?
Now this is very interesting because you'll be very surprised to know that not for a single moment did I feel any sense of discrimination or a lack of acceptance even for a moment, not only with my Japanese partners, but across the multiple Japanese platforms that I occupy. Not with the Exchange Trade Organization, not with the embassy, not with the Japanese government, not with the other Japanese MSMEs that I work hard with JETRO to bring into India, etc. It was not at all difficult, and I'll tell you why. It's nothing to do with their culture or accepting women or other. Once they repose faith in you, once they trust you, Japanese building trust is the most critical. Like Veer said, there was already a journey with them, right? Yep. Once they trust you, it is their sense of self-discipline, no bearing of the socio-cultural, historical angle to it. It is their system or process that they will automatically accept you. Doesn't matter who you are. Man, woman, they will accept you. You know, it doesn't, gender doesn't matter then. It's because of their own internal sense of discipline. It's trust and confidence overtakes gender. So they don't allow that gender to come in. That is it. I actually faced a little more sometimes, not always. Like I said, 90% there was not much of a problem. But I did feel a little bit of it more with the local community.
Really?
Much more with the local. Much more. Not even for a moment with the Japanese. On any platform. On any of the India-Japan platforms.
Yeah. Our time ended a little while ago, but I'm keeping going because this is so interesting. I think people here don't necessarily realize the scale of the businesses you run.
Not very easy to share finance, but I can tell you there are 7 large joint ventures. My daughter now has been nominated on the boards, and she actually actively participates in the operations. I'm a partner company, so I work more on partnership platforms with the joint ventures. But they're very large, and really the Japanese operationally run it, so that is really their responsibility. But the level of decisions that I have to sometimes take, the level of contribution or value addition that I have to make is for a very, very large scale, because the impact would be on a very large scale. And that is what sometimes gives me the anxiety that it does. Because there are 7 joint ventures with the Japanese. There are many more that we are working on. We don't want to stop. They will have more requirements for different business verticals to come into India. And all of those verticals may start small, but eventually the footprint is for huge scale. It would be multi-thousand crore businesses in the future. So you really have to work at it, and you have to have your mind focus on it. You can't allow your grief to intervene with your purpose.
You know, 20 years ago, when I first knew you, you struck me as being the kind of person who never gave up, who never said die, who never thought anything was impossible. It was sometimes difficult to make that out at first because you were good looking, charming, well dressed, but there was always a sort of steely determination to you. Do you think that helped?
Yes, Veer, that absolutely helped. I don't know about the looks helping, but hopefully...
No, I didn't mean that. I meant the steely determination.
No, I just had to lighten it because, otherwise my story should not be such a sob story either. So, yes, I think that helped. I was in a boarding school called Lawrence School, Sanar, and our motto was never given. Yeah. And that was our song, never given is my motto. So I think it ingrained very early. It's also the individual that you are, right? It's the way you're brought up. It's also the way you individually think, what you go through in your life. Maybe it's God's way of preparing you. I don't know. Maybe it's God's way of preparing you for a later episode in your life. So I think I was really from the beginning like that. Though, as I said, the suddenness of an episode or a crisis does have a transformative impact on you, and you do change. You are not the same person after. This will also happen to you in your business. If you're doing a huge change in your business, you're struck by a crisis or a calamity and you have to resolve it, then you have to have all your leadership skills right up front with all your experience, sense of purpose that overrides the loss and the grief.
A final question, though we are long over our time. Are there times when you still feel lonely, still feel that you're all alone?
I must say that it's the big fat Indian family that came to the rescue. I have like 150 relatives, and I told them, I said, don't you please keep coming. So you won't believe this, but in 2 years, I've been alone at home for a total of about 40 days. And so the older aunt, and they're all very educated women. They're very strong women in my family. They're highly educated. Most are I don't come from a business background, Veer. I come from a professional background. They're lawyers, they're diplomats, they're bureaucrats. And the next generation is also more or less now in business. But it was very nice for me because they would come and hang around at home for weeks at a time, including right now as we speak. And when I need, in the evening after work, they would mentor me, they would support me, and they're very strong. Many of those women, my uncles, have passed away, and they're living alone for 30 years, some on remote farms. And they manage everything. They drive themselves, they grocery themselves. Of course, they all said it happened to you too young. So they said yours is a very different situation. You have a lot more to deal with. But they were all there. So that kind of loneliness, in fact, now I look forward to my time alone. So when I travel now, I don't stay with family. I stay in a hotel because I like my time alone. It's not the lonely feeling, Veer, but what you feel scared.
You
feel
even now?
Scared. Yes, even now. I slept well last night because of Veer and ABP, but I was scared. I said, I have to be at my best. But even now, you do feel scared. I get a lot of palpitation. Because I'll tell you, anything I say or do today, it will hit back immediately on me. It will rebound. Vikram was a huge protective cover, but he was also brilliant. So I knew that if I messed up, if I said something wrong, I'd say, Vikram, he'd say, okay, leave it, leave it. And he would also sometimes help me to deal with it. It's not that he handheld me. He said, you need to be able to work on it yourself. But he was there. And I knew eventually he'd take care of it. That is not there. So more than loneliness, it's the fear of having to walk alone with no support when you fall. You just have to hold something, find your support and get up. You have to watch your back every minute in my position. I can't show vulnerability beyond what I've shown to you all. Right?
That is such an inspiring story, Geetanjali. Thank you so much for sharing it.
Ladies
and gentlemen, Geetanjali Kirloskar.
Can I quickly give you a nice quote since I do so much Japan? I think it's Haruki Murakami-san who said beautifully. He's actually summed it all up. He said that when you come out of a storm, you will not remember what you went through or how you even survived it. You may not even know whether the storm is really over. But one thing is certain. When you come out of a storm, you are not the same person who went into the storm. And that's what the storm is all about. Thank you.